Greetings, friends. For those of you who know me better, you know that I've been away again. Most of the time I'm not here right now. After I've actually lived in this colony for 37 years. Quite amazing. 37 years alone is a long time. At least it seemed long when I started. When you get to this point, all time is now, which it always was. But to be closer to the end of one's incarnation gives you a slightly different perspective. So much is behind you by comparison. And so many of those healing opportunities that were referred to in our reading today, the unexpected, which often is stronger than you would have wanted it, but yet Swami's telling us to accept everything as Divine Mother's grace. I mean, it all sounds so simple in concept, and yet it becomes so complex when we try to live it. These last 4 weeks I was in South America. I've never been to that part of the world. We were 2 weeks in Argentina and 2 weeks in Ecuador. An unusual trip because in both places we were just in one city, and in both places they had arranged for us in Buenos Aires, in the middle of the city, there's 2 flats above each other. And in Ecuador, this beautiful 5-bedroom house, somebody just moved out of it and let us move in. So our whole crowd, Bhakti Marga, Atman, Dambara, Atul, was the basic group. A woman named Kali, some of you may know. And we just lived there in a little cooperative way, so it felt more like not being away from home because we weren't getting in and out of cars and in and out of airplanes, and it just became life. So when I picked up everything and planted it back in the house that I live in here, it all seems seamless, which of course is what we're all trying to do, isn't it? To just be able at all times to be living in the company of the divine, doing what Divine Mother asks us to do. Actually, instead of being harder when I'm on these journeys, which is the assignment Swami Kriyananda gave it to me more than a decade ago, but only in the last few years have I been able to travel as much as I can. That's the phrase he gave to me. I think he actually suggested I live nowhere, but I haven't risen to that point. Of all the Ananda communities in all the world, this is the best one for travel because there are 2 airports within 30 minutes. And no other Ananda entity anywhere on the planet can boast 30 minutes from 2 airports. So for the present, this seems like the place. But the experience of what I've been doing the last 4 weeks is a great deal of what Swamiji is urging us to do, what the Bible is telling us, what the Gita is telling us, in terms of how to move through this planet. And age, I love being older. Sometimes there are little surprising things like opening jars and stuff like that, which suddenly things that used to be possible, or objects I used to be able to pick up who now just simply laugh at me when I bend over and try to move them. There's a little bit on the physical side. I've been graced with only a little bit. But what age gives us, and age is not physical, but we're so forgetful from one incarnation to the next that we have to start the whole story over again. Just a few minutes ago, I was over in the other building, and there's a little girl. One of you has given your little girl to the young men over there who are taking care of them today. And all I could hear was her voice. Yes, no, 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 yes, yes, no, no. And it was just with all 100% of her commitment. Small body, didn't make any difference. It was, I'm here, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And that is just the way it's going to be. And you could see her declaring her will on the world. And of course, we have to raise her properly to believe that she can do that, to get us to the point where we realize that declaring our will on the world is not such a good idea. But until we learn and have that power to choose, then we have to gradually refine our choices. You know, we're still having to act with our own will. When I was at the very beginning of the life that I'm closer to the end of now with Ananda, and I would often do classes teaching people about what it means to be a disciple and what basic meditation and all of that. And there was so much, often people would come in with all their own, like that little girl, only grown up. So you say it more graciously. You now have a big intellectual construct about it. Whereas when you're a child, you just say, no, no, like that. But the construct is, I've thought about this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And so when you talk about a guru, and in our purification ceremony on Sunday mornings, we say, I seek purification by the grace of God. And then the light bearer acting on behalf of the masters, open your heart to me, the master says, and I will enter and take charge of your life. Now, depending on where you are on the spectrum, that sounds like the good news or the bad news, doesn't it? Yeah. It's like, hallelujah, I've made such a wreck of it, let's see what you can do. And the other side of it is, no way, not my life. It's mine. And I would have, newer students come in and say, I want to do it my way. I don't want anybody to take charge. I don't want Master to be telling me what to do. I said, no such luck, honey. Wouldn't it be great if God really just, laid it out for us and made it clear? And Swamiji would tell us, and he lived with Master for 3.5 years. He said, you would think, Master, he not only understood us, he was inside of our consciousness. Swamiji tells a story about one of the young monks there who was traveling from Arizona to California from the 2 ashrams that Yogananda had. It was late at night. He was hungry. He stopped at some roadside place. All they had was hamburgers. Master had told him to be a vegetarian, but it was late at night and he was hungry and all they had was hamburgers. So he ate 1 or 2 of them, thinking, he'll never know. He gets to the ashram in Los Angeles and Master says, when you're on the road late at night and all they have is hamburgers, better just not eat. And the disciple says, you knew. And Master says very casually, I know every thought you think. And now we can't, with our human brains, we don't even know how he does that. Tuning in, and now I've got that one, and now I'll do that one. It's so entirely different. I was with Swamiji in Disneyland once, looking at hundreds of people, and somehow this spiritual mood came over Swami, and he, looking out at all these people, he said, imagine, he said, not merely loving them, which was plenty hard enough. He said, imagine being every one of these people as much as you are yourself. I mean, there's a point where the human mind just can't go there. So we know our own thoughts effortlessly, don't we? Because we're inside this body and we identified with it. We do identify with it. But if we didn't, if our minds actually were merging, if our consciousness was really aware of what it really is, it would see that that same life force is in everyone, that there is no difference between us. I used to think that Swamiji was very disciplined. This is how when I first met Swami Kriyananda, when I was in my early 20s, and his behavior was so impeccable. He was so always conscious, and I, of course, knew it most deeply with the way he dealt with me. And sometimes I was aware of it in the moment. Sometimes I would only see it after time, sometimes even years had passed, to see how very, very conscious he always was of every thought that was going on in my head. And it was so different than you think. Because when our consciousness is really like that, what comes with it is not this desire to show off and how powerful I am, and you're a little hungry, aren't you? You know, you're thinking of marshmallows, aren't you? You know, whatever it is where we get to show what we know. Because when we have that feeling about others, what comes with it is the most profound compassion. There's the desire to express kindness, to be supportive, to feel every little hurt that is passed out. We pass out hurts with each other so casually because we don't feel it, because we express outwardly we have something unsettled inside us. And we have this unfortunate idea that if I pass it on to you, then maybe I'll have less of it. But of course, that's not at all how it works. But when our consciousness expands, and what I gradually understood with Swamiji was he wasn't disciplining himself. This was just his spontaneous response, one of compassion and kindness and concern and sternness when it was necessary, as he was speaking today about Divine Mother, to love someone, to truly care about them, to have profound compassion for them, doesn't mean that you're always just coddling. It means also that I know what you really need. You know, you think that this is where your happiness comes from, but I know where your happiness comes from. You see, that's what we gradually have to understand when Swami is saying to us, sometimes healing requires strong measures. I mean, think about physical operations that people have to go through, or long cycles of rehabilitation, or whatever it might be. Do we shrink away from those challenges because we'd rather everything just, go along nice? But then sometimes it collapses, either in illness or ill health or mental difficulty, whatever it might be. Sometimes it's just a fight, and that's all it is. It's just time after time. And this is what the Bible is telling us. Just don't be satisfied just because you're a little better than the worst. But where our happiness really comes from, and our potential for happiness. But we have to meet the divine law. And no matter how many times, like that little girl, we just say, no. It's not made up. It's not arbitrary. And this is what we slowly have to understand. Whatever pain, whatever challenge, whatever suffering we're facing is a sign. Just like when there's something hot and you put your hand on it, just yesterday, I took the frying pan over to here and then put it in the sink, and then I put my hand on it. Like, what was I thinking? And what do you know? It was really hot because I'd just taken it off the flame. And so my hand hurt. I didn't burn it, but it hurt. And you go like that. Just in a second, you step away. But in our actual lives, we just do the wrong thing over and over again. And only after many incarnations do we begin to notice that my flesh is burning. And then by the time our flesh is burning, we're so confused. Why is this happening? And it isn't that we're evil or mean, they have bad intentions. And you see, this is what the masters understand. Nobody has bad intentions in the sense of they're not trying to make themselves miserable. Every single wrong action seemed like a good idea at the time, or else we wouldn't have done it. And often it's the result of weakness, of compulsion, of fear. And it's a very, very complicated story. I was listening to Swami talk about it on a recording recently, and he said, God is a good dramatist. In the good story, you're reading it through, the murder mystery. There's all these different characters. Are they really what they seem? Who is really responsible? What really happened? You get closer and closer to the end, and then all the parts begin to come together. There's certain authors that I like to read trivial mystery stories. I've been on a lot of airplanes, and mystery stories on an airplane. If you have a good book, the flight is really pleasant. And so there's this one mystery writer that I have all her books on my Kindle from 20 years ago, so now I'm reading them again. But I always know, because they're murder mysteries often, or mysteries, I always know that nobody that I really like in the story is going to turn out to be the villain. It's very relaxing. You know, it's very disappointing if the character that you really love turns out to be the bad one. Swamiji, when he would want to buy a book, because he would travel a lot, often in the airport, he would look for a book. He would always read the end first. He said, because I don't want to read a story that has a sad ending. He said, I've had too much sadness in my own life. There is too much sadness in the world. If I'm reading a book, I don't want it to be sad. I said, sir, but doesn't that spoil the suspense? He said, well, as a writer, I enjoy seeing how they get to the end. That's how he put it. But you see, this is the life that we're living too, isn't it? This is just this extraordinary, complicated story with all these characters. And the end of the story, it's always, they lived happily ever after. You know, that's the sort of joke. They lived happily ever after. That's Sat Chit Ananda, isn't it? Ever existing, ever aware, ever knew joy. And it's not the end of the story until they live happily ever after. And so all of us, we're in the middle of our story, aren't we? You know, we're still living. We are going to live forever because our divine self is eternal, but it's not happily ever after. But that is how the story ends. So Divine Mother is working with us. She's saying, oh, I'm going to give you this disappointment. I'm going to give you this reward. I'm going to give you this challenge. I'm going to end your life sooner than you wanted it to. I'm going to extend yours much longer than you wanted it to. Whatever it might be, wherever the point is where we have not yet had the courage and the grace and the willingness to really listen and receive, and the courage to face. This is really who I am. This is really what I have to work with. And the remarkable feature about all of this is the degree to which Divine Mother is on our side. If we could ever deeply and truly understand that, and insofar as we truly understand that we are not alone, that we have an infinite partner in this who knows us better than we know ourselves, and knows what we need more than we ourselves know. You know, it's always just that little bit of rebellion. Why is it like this? Why is it happening? Why does this? Why that? But I don't know if we're ever really going to learn this. I was listening, and I cannot remember now the source. One of the factors of traveling as much as I have and meeting as many people as I do now, my memory has always been very keen, and I can still remember the facts of things, but sometimes I can't remember where I was or who I was with when it happened, because there's just too many of the faces now. But somewhere along the line, somebody has this quote, which is supposed to be from Babaji in the Himalayas, the everlasting, ever-living master. And whether it's from him or not, it works. He said, this is attributed to him, he said that it is not his responsibility to suppress the darkness. His responsibility is to increase the light. I never have understood that quotation. It just hasn't made sense to me, but I was just thinking about it just this morning, and it's like this. It has to do with our free will. It has to do with the fact that Divine Mother even that this is why when people say, oh, I don't want to have a guru, I want to run my own life, I say no such luck. Because we have a single opportunity, which is that we get to choose whether we're going to be in tune with the divine light or whether we're going to block that light and not experience it in the way that God would give it to us. This is why the French saint, the Curé d'Ars, said, if you knew how much God loved you, you would die for joy. This is something that is often repeated. It's such a beautiful phrase. Well, why don't we know how much God loves us? Well, because we're protecting all these different things. The light is shining on us, and we have our backs to it. So it creates a shadow. It creates a shadow in our own hearts. Because we have all these things that we're still attached to that we think will make us happier, and we instead of trusting that Divine Mother knows what is best for us, we're busy protecting the pieces that we want to keep. If it was God's job to suppress the evil in this world, that means that God would be suppressing people who are acting in ways that are completely against their best interest, but they don't yet know that that's not the right way to act. You see, he would be acting against his own creation. He would be taking away from us our ability to choose the light. And if we don't choose the light on our own, think about it. Anything that's just imposed upon you, sooner or later you rebel against it or sneak away from it. Or when pressure really comes, you can't hold it. You just can't hold it because it's not really yours. This is what the power of the saints is. The power of the saints, and this is what I was saying about Swamiji. Swamiji was not disciplined in the way he treated us. It was how he perceived the world. That he perceived the divine presence everywhere. A guest at our retreat many years ago said to Swamiji, he said, you hardly know me. I've been here only a few days. He said, but I feel more love from you than I feel from my own family. And he was totally bewildered. How can you love me like that? You don't even know me. And Swami said, well, yes, it's true. He said, I really don't know much about you. I'm not even sure he knew the man's name at that point. Your family knows all about your life and all of that. But Swami put it this way. He said, when I look at you, I see the presence of God, whom I already love. So it's not like I have to learn to love you. It's that one trains oneself everywhere you look to see the presence of the divine. And you practice when it's easier. That's why God gives us romances and gives us children and gives us parents, so we can begin to understand what it is to love. But we make a grave mistake when we think, I love you because of this, and I love you because of that. And then, of course, if I love you because, then I don't love them because. And it just goes on and on. Maya, the great illusion, they call it, one of the definitions is the measurer. It's always measuring whether or not. But divine sight just sees the divine everywhere. And when the divine sight sees misguided souls who are behaving in a very bad way, the divine response to it is not to squeeze them and not let them learn. They have to be allowed to learn because we're all allowed to learn. And so what Babaji and the others do then is they project ever more powerfully, ever more attractively, divine light into the world, so that when we survey our choices, that one will look more attractive to us because we have experienced the consequences of turning away from the light. So when Jesus promises us, be therefore perfect, he means live in this world as God made it, in harmony with how he made it. And then, of course, Swami adds into the reading at the end from the Gita, out of 1,000 who seek God, maybe one knows me as I am. Here's the good news. Master said, our percentage is higher. It's more than out of 1 out of 1,000. Whether it's 2 out of 1,000 or not, I've never heard it clarified. But what difference does it make? Swamiji once commented, there was this, I don't know who did the survey, but at some point someone announced that a woman over the age of 40 was more likely to be killed by a terrorist than ever to get married again, which, as you can imagine, created this whole wave through the media. I mean, this was 30 years ago, but it was entertaining and disheartening, and it went on like that. Swami said, there's no such thing as statistics. He said, there's only individual karma. It's a very interesting point, isn't it? So even the Gita comment, out of 1,000, only 1 finds God. It's not a statistical probability. It's a question of the human heart. How much do I want it? How much courage do I have? You know, the song that Keshava was singing was so these songs of Swami can just take you. You know, every effort we spend brings more light in the end till our gladness in God's ever new. Now it's just, that's the whole of everything today. Every effort we spend, eventually. And that's all we have to do. Your master even said that. You don't have to conquer darkness. You just have to resist. Just have to resist. In other words, you just have to keep trying. And in order to keep trying, we have to become deeply convinced that God exists, that He loves us, and that it's worth the effort to keep trying. That's why we come together, just to remind ourselves. That's why we were born, so that we get to try one more time. Just one more adventure to find out, what brings me happiness, what brings me suffering? Does God really love me? And we don't have to die for joy, but when the end of our incarnation comes, we die with joy. We seek that everlasting, and they lived happily ever after. That's our story. And the story's not over till we reach that point. God bless you.
From the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from Thee, I will taste Thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on Thee, and in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trial shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. with threads of memories. On that magic love will I emboss. God, God, God. Every night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore. God, God, God. In waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God, God, God. Please join. God, 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 Tara's brave hill so quiet the day I came there. Not a green leaf stirred on the air. Not a bird did proclaim ancient grandeur and fame. Only ruins, faint memories declare. I marvel to think, how can greatness e'er die? How can song disperse in the sky? How can hopes and dreams fade? How the warrior's sharp blade become dust? Was victory a lie? I stood there and pondered the great deeds of man's past, how like clouds in the sunset no glory can last. Even we, as we labor to achieve some bright end, must accept after glory that the night will descend. I've dreamed a broad rainbow over thicket and thorn, over crags that call tarry, your hopes are forlorn. All too oft in my dreaming, courage turned to despair, till I learned that success is but the courage to dare. As I gazed and thought sadly of Tara's demise, suddenly I saw her walls rise, saw her long regal halls, heard her people's brave calls, as though time had doffed a disguise. And I knew in that moment the deeds that men do never die, each victory is true. Every effort we spend gives more strength in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new. Every effort we spend gives more strength in the end, till our gladness in life's ever new.